Jam Global Radio. This is Clarity.
I want to say a big good evening going out to each and every single one of our listeners right across the globe this evening.
I paid for my crime.
It's Saturday night, the time is 6 o'clock, and it's time for Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio.
I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. Back in the day, I didn't really care about the system. It was all about survival. It was do or die. I had too many rivals. I was too young and foolish to stay in school. I learned my lessons in the streets. There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my...
On a week when we've seen the stressful tragedy of the Grenfell Tower fire, many lives taken.
So sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my...
UK is in mourning, right on the back of the Manchester and London terrorist attacks.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime.
We also saw Comey give evidence against Trump this week.
Already did my time. I paid for my crime. I was a drug dealer, sold more drugs than Superfly, but I never got high on my own supply. I'm not proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my story to you and you. I had to repent. I must admit, I was doing all kind of...
On a week when there's a mistrial call on the Bill Cosby sexual harassment or...
Young and dumb, my brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was...
sex assault case.
Me and Billy the Kid had a lot in common. I was the real term.
And on a week where a police officer once again is acquitted
like a real alligator, especially all you
after fatally shooting Philando Castile.
He could be facing life in prison.
Already did my time, paid for my crime. Already did my time. Already did my time, paid for my crime.
Hopefully we're going to have our guest Mark Clements on today, and we've got a tremendous story to tell. The theme of the story today is forced to confess.
Did my time, I paid for my crime.
And we'll be telling that story in just a while.
Did my time, I paid for my crime. I'm trying to get this felony off my back so I can get my life on track and have the right to vote and live like an ordinary citizen again. This is my message to all of my friends in the pen, statewide, worldwide. There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands and very quick on my feet. I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail. Trying to cope with this living hell. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. I was a drug dealer, sold more drugs than Superfly, but I never got high on my own supply. I'm not proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my story to you and you. I had to repent. I must admit, I was doing all kind of stupid shit. Now sit back and think it over since I've gotten older. The life I used to live, I wouldn't do it again. I was young and dumb, my brain was so numb. I was a real Forrest Gump, but I was nobody's chump. Me and Billy the Kid had a lot in common. I was the real Terminator, much meaner than Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'd chew you up and spit you out like a real alligator, especially all you haters. Already did my time, paid for my crime. Already did my time, already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Got to tell you, our guest is currently running late
in prison.
as they have a power cut out there at the moment. So he's nipped out to get some fuel for his generator.
Trying to cope with this living hell.
And we're going to try and keep this show alive until he gets back, okay? Stay with me.
This living hell. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Trying to cope with this living hell. This living hell. This living hell. This living hell. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, the glory, forever and ever. Amen. My crown, my crown, my crown, my crown.
Let's take the video off, Mark. You can take the video off. Yeah, take the video off.
Can you say that again, Julien?
Can you turn off the video?
I'm trying to get this.
Can I turn off the video?
So I can get my life on track and have the right to vote and live like an ordinary citizen again. This is my message to all.
Oh, I'll tell you what's better. If we cut the line and let me call you and just answer on audio, okay?
Okay.
That's what we do. You're looking good though. You're looking good, my friend. All right,
okay.
But we can only get this through on audio. If we go through on video, it will cut the line out.
Okay.
I'll cut you off and then we'll come back. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, we are going to go live to Mark Clements. It has actually worked out. So let's do this. While we got him going, let's do this. Oh, come on, don't. Nope, it's not letting me call. Let's try again. Bear with me. Not sure what's going on there.
I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime.
Hello, Mark. I can see you, but can you turn off the video? I can see you. Yeah, I can see you, but can you turn off the video? I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear a thing. I can't hear you at all, Mark. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to just have to bear with me for a minute. Cannot hear you at all still. Can't hear you, Mark. Alright, let's just do this again. Let's try again. Now we're ringing, come on. Hello, Mark, can you hear me? Hello, Mark. Mark, can you hear me? Hello, Mark, you need to turn off the video. I can't hear you at all, mate. I cannot hear you. I cannot hear you. I can't hear you. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. You need to get your sound on. Whatever you did when we did the test call during the week, you need to do it again. Okay. Guys, I'm just going to go back to play my song, and hopefully they'll come back to me in a moment.
I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. Back in the day, I didn't really care about the system. It was all about survival. It was do or die. I had too many rivals. I was too young and foolish to stay in school. I learned my lessons in the streets. There was not a man I couldn't beat. I was good with my hands and very quick on my feet. I was swimming in women. I had girls all over the street. I was getting money. Life was so sweet. Now things have changed. The whole game has been rearranged. I'm a changed man. Don't need no gun in my hand. It ain't about being no gangster. Life is too short to spend it all in jail. Trying to cope with this living hell. Already did my time. I paid for my crime. Already did my time. I paid for my...
Can you hear me, Mark? Hello, Mark. Can you hear me? Whatever it is, we've got no sound. You must be on mute. You must have your computer on mute. You must have your computer. You got to unmute your computer and get the sound out. Unmute your computer. I'm sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. We did this the other day. We had a sound check, and everything worked wonderful. And I'm not sure what's going on here. We did the call, and we got through okay. So I'm gonna. Hello, Mark. Hello, Mark. Right. I don't know what else to do but just to try and call again. Let's do this again. Kill it dead. It's ringing but no sound. Hello, Mark. 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 Let's try it again. Hello, Mark. "15 minutes into the show, we've got no sound. I coming out live. Hello, Mark. Guys, am I anybody tuning in? Am I coming out live? Can you hear me? Hello, Mark. Hello, Mark. Hello, Mark. Hello, Mark. Just broken my phone case. Hello, Mark. Hello, Mark. Hello, Mark. Hello, Mark.
Yes, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you, sir.
Ah, okay, because that's what I told her. Let me call you and
Okay.
see if you can hear me. Now he can hear, Teresa.
Okay. Now we're hearing.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
We've
So do you want me to hang up, Teresa?
yeah,
Okay, Teresa hung up from me. Okay.
Okay.
So
yeah, we're good. We're good. All right, Mark.
Okay.
I am terribly sorry. When we did the sound check, everything was kosher. I'm not sure what's going on today.
Man, want me to tell you out here, anything is subject of occurring. I didn't know we was gonna have a power outage. So these things occur.
I hear that. You know that sometimes you just feel that the powers that be try to infiltrate and deviate and take away from God's glory. But here we are. We're going to do this, and we're going to do this now.
Yes. Okay.
So here's the thing. Here in the UK at the moment, we're reeling from the recent tragedy that we've just had a couple of days ago with the big tower block in a local community going up in London.
Yes.
There's still 70 or plus more bodies missing, despite the 70 or 30 or so that they've already declared dead. And we're also talking about this as a week where Donald Trump has had testimony given against him by Mr. Comey, former FBI director.
Yes.
And then to add to all of that, just yesterday, police officer was acquitted in the shooting and the killing of Philando Castile.
Yes.
And these are the three big stories coming out in the world this week that has got us on tenterhooks and on the edges of our seats. And here on Issues Today, we take a stance on all of these things, especially when they stand against our basic human rights.
Yes.
So I introduced those at the beginning of the show while we was trying to wait for you to get your generated. So I'm so sorry that you had this power cut, and I'm so glad that you've been able to sort this all out. But Mark Clements, thank you for agreeing to come on Issues Today and share your story with us.
And thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. One of the things that you really campaign against is the end to the death penalty, and we're going to talk about that later on in the show. But in order to start up with the show, we're going to really start talking about you. And in this headline that I'm reading here now, Mark Clements was just 16 years old when Chicago police beat him in an interrogation room at Area 3 in 1981. And as a result of the beating, he signed a false confession to an arson that killed 4 people. And due to his age, he was not eligible for the death penalty, so instead he was sentenced to life without parole.
Yes.
Now, when you just read that headline, it really does strike a resonating note with me, because I'm aware I used to work with Liberty and miscarriages of justice here in the UK, and we had several incidents where people were beaten into submission of a confession. And in fact, a particular whole police force was disbanded because of its regulatory use of violence and force to get confessions from people that were eventually overturned on appeal. So as I read that, even before we go into the story, as a 16-year-old boy, what I want you to tell me, because I'm going to go forward and I'm going to go back with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can go back to the schedule and get it, please. As a 16-year-old boy, who it's all right, but my wife's just come in and told me that I've deleted a couple of programs.
Problem.
Yeah, but she can go back and get it on schedule. As a 16-year-old boy, you've been picked up by the police for whatever reason. How does that feel? Well, I mean, what was that all about for you? Where were you? What was going on?
Well, in the city of Chicago, being 16 years of age in 1981, and as I have stated, Chicago, I did not know, nor did many of the residents fully understand that police officers were rounding African Americans and Latinos up once heinous crimes would occur in the city of Chicago, and they would be considered as heat burners. Heat burners are cases in which it draws political outrage as to why a suspect has not been caught. This building, it was a building that housed 3 families and a store on the first floor. The store was well visited by residents in the area. It was a primary African American community. Most people around that particular area did not hang around the store once it closed. However, no one really truly understood that the store was selling drugs. And as a result of selling drugs, it sold some B12 protein powder to a motorcycle gang out of Detroit, Michigan. Selling this B12 protein powder to this motorcycle gang, the gang came back in retaliation. It was seen by residents where that this gang attempted to stuff one of the residents in the trunk of a car. That resident, being Rufus Scott, his father owned the store. Sam Scott was someone that was known throughout the south side of Chicago as a drug dealer. I knew nothing about him due to the fact that, first of all, that was not my lifestyle. And second of all, back in 1981, it was very difficult for adults to sell children drugs.
Yeah.
And
unprincipled as well.
Yes. And many people fail to realize that the reason that people did not sell these drugs is due to the fact that it really drew heat from the police department upon their drug operation. Well, the Scotts were someone that were very well known to the Chicago Police Department. 4 people, as I have stated, they died in this fire. They died in a very awful way. They died of smoke inhalation. It was rumored that one of the visitors of this building, because it was 2 individuals in this fire that did not live in this building. they were frequent visitors of their friend, and they would basically get drunk all day and all night. That was their lifestyle. However, they were found inside of their friend's apartment. One was found under a kitchen table with a heavy odor of gasoline on his clothing. Another was found in a clothes closet. Another was found on the side of her bed, and another was found near the couch area inside of their friend's apartment. Well, this makes it appear as if someone entered the apartment, someone killed these people, and someone set this fire. Well, for many, 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 many years, being someone that was taken down to a police station and the confession was obtained, not one witness to this crime other than the confession. I had two different attorneys that worked with the Cook County Public Defender's Office. One had 1 year of experience, the other had 2 years of experience. Their defense was basically that being 16 years of age, that I suffered from some form of mental retardation. That was an argument that I heavily protest, but therefore the attorneys felt that this would be an argument in which the confession could be contested. They did contest the fact that allegedly I had a low IQ and that I was taken inside of an interrogation room, and being taken inside of the interrogation room, my parents had not been contacted by Chicago police, and that a youth officer had not been meaningfully assigned to assist me while at the police station. And meaningfully in this particular case would basically deal with the fact that a youth officer did come into play, but he only came into play once the confession had been obtained by the Chicago Police Department.
Here's the thing, Mark. Up until that moment, how many times had you been into an interrogation room or a police cell prior to this day?
I had been inside of a police interrogation room because I had been caught stealing before out of a store. So they took me down to the police station and they called my parents. But it was not like this type of an interrogation. Previously, they would ask you a few questions. They would write those questions down and then make a determination if they wanted to try you as a juvenile. Basically, trying you as a juvenile was they would call your parents. They would tell your parents what transpired, and they would tell you a court date, and you could go home with your parents. Well, far as being questioned relevant to anything serious, that had never, ever in my life occurred. I had an uncle that worked with the Chicago Police Department, and I just did not believe that the police would stoop so low to beat a kid. At least a confession where that 4 people died and that they really didn't care about who they arrested, long as they had arrested someone.
Okay, so take me around before we go back into that case. Take me around where you were and what you were doing when the police first came and approached you to arrest you or to take you in the first place. What was it that you were actually in the process of doing?
Well, I had went over to the south side of Chicago. I resided, by the way, with my mom's on the north side of Chicago. But due to the fact that I had two sisters that was at a aunt's house in that particular area, I had went to go visit them. And going to visit them, this young lady by the name of Ramonia Patton, she approached me, and me and her had had an altercation several days before she approached me on this particular date. And she apologized for the altercation, and she asked me for a cigarette. And I told her that I did not have a cigarette, but if she walked to the store with me, I would purchase a pack of cigarettes and I would share some with her. Well, that's what she agreed to do. Little that I understood at that particular time that I was falling right into her web, due to the fact that earlier that day, she had went to the Chicago Police Department in hopes of collecting a $10,000 reward, in which the building's owners had basically put up to sidetrack the Chicago Police Department, due to the fact that they wanted to hide the fact that they were selling drugs out of the store and inside of that building. So they tried to make it look like they were concerned citizens and that they would do anything and everything to bring justice. Ramona Patton bit the bait, and she first identified a cab driver, Dwight Scott. Dwight Scott was taken down to Area 3 Violent Crimes, which was located on the south side of Chicago. And Dwight Scott describes being inside of a interrogation room and being beat by the detectives, but because he had such strong alibi, the police had no choice but to release him. 2 or 3 days later is once Ramona Patton then came and she identified me.
Was you known to her?
Was I what now?
Was you known to Ramona?
Yes. So, me and Ramona had a altercation several days before she fingered me to the police. We had this altercation in wake of my sisters. In other words, I come up under an era that basically your parents would tell you to watch after your sisters. And basically, if anyone tried to do anything to them, you better protect them.
Yeah.
So I always had that protective, basically father role over my two sisters. One was older than I, and the other was younger than I. But Ramona Patton was a individual that had served some juvenile prison time for allegedly killing her playmate, stabbing her playmate to death. At that particular time, I had no knowledge of her past. Unfortunately, in not having any knowledge of her past, this stuff could not be properly adjudicated in court. But however, Ramona was aggressive. Ramona was about 220 pounds. She stood approximately 6'1", 6'2", and me at best, I was about 120 pounds soaked and wet. But just being under the raising that I must protect my sisters, I refused to let Ramona basically fight my sisters. And because I refused to let her fight my sisters, Ramona picked up a brick and she attempted to hit me in the head, which started the altercation between me and Ramona. And once it started the altercation between me and Ramona, there was a fight. I got the best end of the fight, and she vowed revenge.
So that was her motive for fingering you. So
Correct. It was, well, it fitted into her scheme. It fitted into her scheme because she had originally identified this person, Dwight Scott, who was the cab driver. And once it was determined that Dwight Scott could not have committed this crime and police sources released him, then therefore her attempts to still try to collect this $10,000 reward that had been offered by the Scotts family, it led to me and some of my playmates. And we were taken into police custody because...
Here's a question, Mark. Did anybody not question that her first finger pointing was at a fully grown man? And how did she make that ginormous mistake from a fully grown man to a young kid?
Well, I think it was Ramona's attempt any way, by any means necessary, that she wanted to get her hands on this money. And greed is what led her to identify Dwight Scott and what led her to identify me as well.
Okay, but Mark, I get that. That's Ramona's motive. That's her agenda, and people will try all kinds of things. But where was the common sense from law enforcement to say, hang on a minute, you've just fingered a fully grown man who's a cab driver. We've gone after him. That hasn't worked out because we've managed to find a clear and precise alibi for him. But now you're fingering a 16-year-old kid who looks nothing like the first person that you first tried to put forward for this. Wasn't her that question at all?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, if that did arise, I don't know. But in most of the John Burge torture cases, police could care less.
Right.
All they were looking for were people who they can round up and take down to the police station. And whoever was the weak link, so to speak, the one who confessed or the one that they feel that they could gather some type of evidence to plant the case on, that was your case.
Right. So now you've been pulled in. You was going about your business, doing what you did. Now you're in the police station, and they tell you that you're under arrest, or they want to ask you questions about what? How did the nature of the crime get introduced into that conversation, and how did you respond to that?
Well, what ended up happening is that once we went into this store to purchase the cigarettes, I still remember it as if it was yesterday. I went in and I purchased a pop. I purchased a pack of cigarettes and a raspberry Suzy Q. It's like a little cake. Yeah. And I purchased it, and I was standing at the counter to pay for it, and I saw Ramona Patton jumping up and down inside of the store saying, "Here he is, here he is." All I know is that I seen two black people come from the rear, meaning the back room of this store, and they had handguns. Once seeing the handguns, I ran.
Right.
So running, I got away, and I called a cousin, and I explained to the cousin what was going on. So he told me.
So at that point, did you know that the two men with guns were police, or did you just think that Ramona got somebody to come and get you?
I thought you hit that on the head. I thought that Ramona was trying to set me up and to have me killed inside of this store. these men with the guns never announced the fact that they were police officers.
Okay. So now you've run. You've called your cousin. How did the police get to apprehend you in the end?
So once my cousin arrived, we went over to where Ramonia Patton resided. And being on the outside of her residence, a squad car just drove up. The squad car then went into the residence of where Ramona was. And once the two officers came out, I explained to them that, hey, this woman just tried to get me killed at the store and blah, blah, blah. And I explained to them. They listened to me. And then they asked me, is your name Mark Clements? I told them yes. They told me to turn around, that I was under arrest for disorderly conduct. And I asked them, why would I be under arrest for disorderly conduct? They told me that they had received information from Ramonia as well as residents in the community that I was disorderly and that I attempted to fight her, which all was untrue.
So hang on a minute. So originally they're looking for a guy who could potentially be responsible for 4 murders, which is the reason why she's apparently calling them out for you. But their first attempt at charging or arresting you was for disorderly conduct.
Yes, and they put me in the police car. They took me to a regular precinct police station, which was District 7 police station on the south side of Chicago. The 2 African-American cops, one being Virgil Jones and the other one being an officer by the name of Smith, they then came and told me what had I done wrong. And I explained to them that, hey, I did not do anything wrong. And they told me, well, Area 3 Violent Crimes is looking for you. And they asked me, did I know that Area 3 Violent Crimes was looking for me? And I told them no. So they told me that they were going to have to take me down to Area 3, which they did. They transported me down to Area 3. Once checking me in at the sergeant desk, approximately 5 minutes later, this black police detective who was in plain clothes, wearing checkered pants, he comes out. They was like these plaid checkered pants that they would wear back in the 70s and early 80s. He came out and he just hit me in my, no, he asked the officers, is this the little MF? So, you know, the people can put the rest together. And he struck me in my face. Well, you know, we had learned by being in the ghetto settings of Chicago that if you ever get hit in the face, to hit the ground and ball up in a fetus position. That way, the police can only beat you in your back or kick you in your back, but it'll protect your face area.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I did. I could hear the 2 black police officers who had brought me to the police station screaming and hollering at this black cop and telling him that he had to stop due to the fact that I was a juvenile and I was still in their custody. They addressed this black cop as Sarge. So I just took it that he was a sergeant.
And obviously they're superior.
Yes. So they took me, once they brushed me off and stuff like that, they took me upstairs to the 2nd or 3rd floor inside of the police station. And they took me inside of this small interrogation room, which had a table and some cheers, and they handcuffed me to this ring around the wall. You know, of course, they tried to make it appear as if they were concerned, and they stayed at the police station with me for approximately 30 to 45 minutes before they end up leaving, allegedly waiting on a youth officer so that they can turn me over to a youth officer. Well, the youth officer allegedly was not available. So because the youth officer was not available, they took me to another interrogation room, handcuffed me to the ring attached to the wall, and they left. Shortly thereafter, two police officers came inside of the interrogation room. They started to ask me questions. It took them about maybe 10 minutes or so before now they started to explain to me why I had been brought down to the police station. They explained to me that a fire had occurred at 6600 South Wentworth Avenue that resulted in 4 people losing their lives. They stated that one of the victims had been stabbed. They let me see the police reports. They let me see the photos of some of the victims. And
did you recognize any of them?
Well, I recognized one only as a individual because I was the newspaper boy in that area. Right. And I recognized them only as someone that I would see around that building drinking alcohol. But the other 3 individuals, I could not recall if I had ever seen them a day in my life, but I do know that at some point maybe I did see them because, as I've stated, I was the paper boy.
Okay, so now they're claiming that you are potentially their suspect in a multiple homicide. How did you feel? What was your reaction at that point?
Well, I wanted to call my moms so that I could basically let her know what was going on, to seek her advice, and to ask her if she could call an attorney due to the fact that first of all, I didn't know what was going on. And second of all, they were claiming that one of the associates, one of the childhood friends that I grew up with, they were claiming that he was stating that we had committed this offense. And I recall later on going to the bathroom while inside of the police station. And going inside of the bathroom, I seen this detective, and he was looking out of the window drinking alcohol. So looking at a detective drinking alcohol in the police station, I said to myself, oh my gosh. So I hurried up, I used the bathroom, and as I was using the bathroom, the detective asked me why I had been brought down to the police station. I explained to the detective, and I stated that they stated that James Robinson was claiming that we had set a fire. So the detective asked me, did we? And I told him no. That was the end of our conversation, the last of me ever seeing this detective until I would say much as 10, 11, maybe 12 hours later, he ended up coming inside of the interrogation room. He told me that he had been sent to help me. He told me
in that time, did they leave you alone for a while? Was you just left on your own? Or?
Well, I was just basically left at bay. The detectives was coming in and out of the room, of course, and asking me questions relevant to, first of all, why would people be saying that I committed the crime? They asked me basically if I knew someone at a gas station, And I was honest, and I told them, yes, I did know someone at a gas station because I would purchase cigarettes. You know, I was a kid, so I was not legally supposed to be purchasing cigarettes. But the guy at the gas station would sell me the cigarettes. And so what they did do, they went out, they apprehended this person, and I could see this person inside of the police station. They was beating him, and I'm talking about just viciously beating him. And he was screaming and he was hollering and he was saying that he didn't do anything, but they was constantly beating him. They brought another childhood friend into the police station as well by the name of Kenneth Minor. The police had told Kenneth Minor that I had told them that Kenneth and I, as well as James Robinson and someone by the name of Jamaican, had set this fire. So, you know, I don't know if the police had roughed up Kenneth Minor or anything, but I do know that James Robinson did file a complaint with the Chicago Police Department stating that while inside of the interrogation room, he was abused as well as being hit across his knuckles with one of the police officers, these batons. They are blackjacks. And that they beat him across his hands to try to get him to confess to this crime.
So at this point, they've got you, two of your friends, and this other guy that they're trying to tie you guys up with, this guy called Jamaican. What was your possible motive at that time? What was they trying to suggest? What was your reason for setting this fire? Did they have?
Well, what they were stating is that they had received information that some young kids had set this fire because one of the occupants in the building was selling drugs for them, some low-level marijuana, and that the person who was allegedly stabbed by the name of Robert T. Watson, that he was stabbed because he owed Kenneth Minor $10 to $45 for failure to pay for the marijuana. Well, it turned out that this individual, he didn't even have marijuana in his system. Not only did he not have marijuana in his system, he was a known alcoholic throughout the community. He was someone
was Kenneth Minor ever known for supplying marijuana?
No. We were just children that would roam the streets, so to speak. Our hustle was stealing pop bottles and cashing them into the store for extra money.
Yeah, we did that too. Now, okay, let's try and wrap this piece up so that we can move on a little, right? So, I mean, the way that you're looking at it now, there appears to be no motive. You're fingered by somebody who has a personal grudge against you.
Yes.
You have no real association or relationship with the individuals that were inside the house, although you might have come across one who is a known alcoholic in the community. You're not known to the police for being any kind of violent drug dealing thug that's normally coming up on their radar that they're having to chase off the streets on a daily basis or run after and getting away and throwing your stash so they don't find you. You're not known in any of those areas, and now they've got you in a police cell trying to get you to confess to multiple homicide, setting up of the fire that 4 people had killed. Now, earlier on when we were talking, you was talking about the layouts of how all of these individuals were found.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So how did they compare the layout of how these people was found with the motive and agenda set out before you? Was there any explanation given as to? Because to me, we're now talking way beyond just a fire. If you've got
Yes.
4 people who've died in here, if it was just a fire, one of them would have got away, 2 of them or 3 of them would have got away, and one might have got trapped. But all 4 dying in that house tells me that they were dead before the fire took set. So, did they explain any of that? Because normally, what police try to do in order to try and get you, they'll keep on repeating their theory in the hope that at some point they can get you to repeat that theory back as part of your confession. It's a well-known tool that they use. So they would have normally been saying, well, you was doing this, wasn't you? And, and that's why you was doing that, wasn't you? And that's why they were there, wasn't it? And so therefore, when they can get you to confess, once they've got you to surrender to confession, you're now writing out this statement because you can remember what it is that they've told you that they want you to say.
Well, this was a little bit different. What they did do was they beat me first. They beat me in my arms. They beat me in my chest. Of course, they smacked me a few times. Then once I would put my head down, they would beat me. At least it was just one detective, and this detective name was John McCann. He is a known John Burge torture cop, meaning someone that was a subordinate to John Burge. But he beat me in my back once I put my head down, and then he started beating me across my legs, trying to get me to raise my head. Well, once I raised my head, he then shoves his hand in between my growing areas, and he squeezes hard. And he squeezed about like 3 times before he got a firm grip. And once he got the firm grip, I then agreed that, okay, well, whatever you want me to say, I'll say. Because what they wanted me to do was to repeat what they wanted me to say to a man in a blue suit. And this man in the blue suit was a assistant Cook County State's attorney. I agreed to repeat what the detective had told me to state. And once I agreed, the man in the blue suit came. He unpacked his belongings that he had, and he put it on the desk. And then I explained to him, listen here, I did not commit this crime. I explained to him that my parents had not been contacted, that I had been beaten by the police, and that I didn't understand what was going on, and that the police was beating me to get me to state that I committed the crime. The guy in the blue suit, he packs all of his stuff. By the way, his name was Assistant Cook County State's Attorney Kevin Moore, who worked with felony review out of the Cook County State's Attorney's office. And he packed all of his belongings. He went and he then consulted with the same detectives that were engaged into this plot. And once they learned of what I had told this man in the blue suit, they waited approximately, I would say, 5 minutes or so. But the same detective, John McCann, he comes inside of the interrogation room. He accuses me of trying to get him either fired or in trouble with his bosses. He slams the interrogation door. This interrogation room was the size of a small closet, is what it was. And then he locks it. And then he hits me in the chest. I was wearing a white stripe, a blue striped shirt, which had several buttons in the front of it. And he hit this button that made contact with my chest. Because I have asthma, I became short of breath. That did not stop the attack. He began to beat me across my arms, all across my back, because once again, I'm in a fetus position. I'm in this chair, but my head is down, like in between my legs. And this time I'm trying to make sure that he do not grab my genital area again. And he's beating me and he's calling me nigger boy and nigger MF is what he's calling me. This is a white detective. All of the detectives, other than the one black sergeant, every last one of them were Caucasian. After beating me across my chest and then now the legs again, I raised up just for one little tiny second to try to readjust myself, and he grabbed my genitals again, and he squeezed them so hard as if he was trying to pop them out, is what he done. Of course, his racial epithets inflamed towards me as he had my genitals, and he told me, "You're going to cooperate, right? You're going to cooperate." And at that particular time, I started to cry, and I told him yes. Well, I sold candy every Saturday morning at Operation Push, which was where Jesse Jackson Jr., well, not junior, but senior, would hold his Saturday morning forums. It was very popular back then. And because I was also Jesse Jackson's paper boy, the fantasy inside of my head was, well, cooperate with these detectives. They're going to turn you over to your parent, and then you get up and go down to Jesse Jackson and you explain to him exactly what transpired.
Now that was all clear in your head, right? You could
Yes.
that was your lifeline of hope. You could see that, and in your mindset, agreeing to this wasn't the end of the story for you, because you felt in your heart you had a way out, right?
Correct. I felt that I had a way out. I felt that no way in the world that Jesse Jackson would refuse to help me due to the fact that he known me for several years, known me as being a regular participant over at Operation Push, as the cameras and media would follow him around. He was known as raising my hand up and saying, "Keep hope alive," and "Down with dope and up with hope," and things of that nature. So I felt that if there was anyone that I could talk to, I could talk to Jesse. Well, that didn't occur. They told me to state that Kenneth Minor had solicited myself and James Robinson and someone by the name of Jamaica. No one has ever found this person named Jamaica, but that he was mad because he could not collect his money, and as a result, he decided that he was going to burn down this building. Now, keep in mind, the person that was targeted as the person who was allegedly beat, being Robert T. Watson. Robert T. Watson didn't even live in that building. He was visiting friends in that building. They stated that for me to tell the man in the blue suit that we fought him and that we stabbed him, and that each and every time that he would miss a jump, that we would douse the bottom of his pants leg with gasoline.
So hang on a minute, Mark. Are you telling me that the man with the blue suit came into you a second time?
Yes, he came in a second time.
So having heard you tell him what had taken place the first time, right? And that yes. You're denying all knowledge and all involvement in this.
Yes.
He's probably aware that you've been beaten again, and he's going to come back in, and he's agreeing to accept your confession a second time.
Correct. Not one question asked.
Wow.
There was nothing even mentioned out of his mouth, even that he had even consulted with me at that time. He came in as if he had just recently...
That was the first time he was coming in.
Correct. And I recall him stating that he needed to talk with me first, and that he was going to do this right, and he was going to call in a court reporter so that the court reporter can transcribe the confession. And once the detectives and myself being inside of this interrogation room, and all of the way that they really wanted me to state all of this type of stuff was put together, they called in this court reporter. They took several pictures of me standing at a blackboard, which did not show any signs of a beating, didn't show any signs of anything occurring to me. And they took these pictures. I basically told them that on the night of June the 17th, 1981, and this is now being June the 25th, the date that they had me in police custody, but on June the 17th of 1981, that myself and 3 others had went to a gas station, and we purchased gas, put it into a gas container, then found some bottles, and we put gasoline in these bottles. And once we put gasoline in these bottles, that we then approached the individual that had sold drugs for Kenneth Minor. He stated that he did not have the money, and as a result, that we beat him, that we stabbed him, that the boy was screaming. You know, he was identified in the confession as a boy, that the boy was screaming, that he was hollering, and as a result of screaming and hollering so loud, that gasoline was poured down the stairwell. And once we reached the bottom of the stairwell, that Kenneth Minor had struck the match to a knife and set this fire.
Okay, let me just stop you there a second. So, with all of this taking place, the gasoline, the beatings, the stabbing, and everything else, how much forensic evidence was found attaching you or any of the other 2 defendants to the scene of the crime?
Well, the other 2 was shockingly and surprisingly never charged. They were never charged. I was the only individual that was charged. The forensic,
but hang on a minute. They said that Kenneth Minor engaged you and your other one in order for you...
James Robinson and Jamaican to basically set this building on fire
because he in retaliation because he couldn't get the money for his drugs. So
yes.
So why was he never charged?
Well, let me tell you, I really don't know. I really don't know why any one was never charged but me, other than to state that it would have tore holes into their plot. It would have tore holes due to the fact that, first of all, the confession made no common sense. Here it is, you have 4 individuals it states that there's 3 bottles and that all 4 individuals had a bottle apiece.
So there's one bottle short already.
Correct. And what they claimed was, at least during the trial portion of the case, is that they had obtained a portion of my fingerprint and that it was on one of the bottles.
Was that fingerprints ever confirmed on trial?
Well, let me tell you, it was only confirmed through allegation. It was never confirmed. I never seen anything in writing.
So the evidence of your fingerprints being a match on the bottle was never produced during the trial?
No. And that was the problem with having one attorney with 1 year of experience and the other attorney with 2 years of experience. They lacked experience from the get-go to ever had been assigned a case like this. Come to find out that the attorneys never even investigated the case. As a result of never even investigating the case, there were people in the neighborhood who had clearly seen what had transpired. There were people in the neighborhood who had went to the police department and told them, you have the wrong person. And the reason you have the wrong person is because the people who committed this offense were on motorcycles and they were grown men. So as a result of that, we had no knowledge of these people ever even existing due to the fact that that was information that was never tendered over to the defense by prosecutors.
Wow. It sounds like a whole mess. A young boy at 16 tortured into a confession, and on top of tortured into a confession, they could have, if they chose to, they could have pursued the evidence that was available to them, the information that was available to them, and caught the right people that did this. It almost sounds as if they didn't want to catch the right people that did this.
They did not, Kevin. And the bottom line here is that in the city of Chicago, under the command of John Burge from 1972 until 1991, there is a systemic pattern of these cases in which primarily African-American people would be rounded up, taken to the police station, deprived of their constitutional rights, in most instances deprived of sleep, deprived of food, deprived of access to the phones, and beat inside of interrogation rooms until they confess to these crimes. And in all of these cases, it was primarily the only evidence was the confession.
Okay, so tell me this, Mark. So you've been forced to confess due to the excruciating pain of having your genitals squeezed so hard that you probably felt that they were going to pop out of your head. And that's a pain more excruciating than most people can ever imagine. I've played football and I've been kicked in my genitals quite accidentally, and it's quite a painful thing. I can't even imagine what that pain would have felt like for somebody to purposefully grab hold of them and squeeze them with all of their strength, being a fully grown man, and you being a young child as you were. And now you've confessed, so you've been charged. Did you at any time get bail in between the time that you were charged and the time you went to trial?
Well, in juvenile cases, bail was something that was not granted at that particular time. In other words, what they would do is they would make a determination based off of the charge, not the evidence in the case, but based off of the charge. should the person remain in custody or should the person be released? Having a African American judge who basically laughed at me once I had explained to him the very next day inside of the courtroom, because I released it in an outburst as to what had occurred to me. And I stated that they grabbed my wee-wee. You know, I did not know the different terms of genitals nor testicles. So I explained to the judge, well, they grabbed my wee-wee. And he just laughed. And he did tell the public defender that was assigned to interview me and to get down to the nitty-gritty as to what occurred. But I could just see mischievous behavior by the entire criminal justice system from the get-go. And it was almost as if they knew what was occurring, and that this was just a systematic form of basically just going through the routines. And as they would hear of these allegations from children as well as men inside of interrogation rooms, based off of how that person explained how they had been mistreated, they knew exactly what detectives did what. So they knew that at some course of my police interrogation room that I ran into some pretty bad police detectives and that they worked under John Burge.
Wow. Well, it transpires that later that morning, around about 2 a.m., on the 26th of June, 1981, you signed a confession that 6 days earlier that you'd killed 4 people, and you spent it took a year and a half before you were sentenced. So I take it in that year and a half, no bail. Did you have visits, family visits, or
yes? Yes.
Was you trying to get your truth out then?
Well, let me tell you, due to the fact, and that's what most people fail to realize, is that once a kid has been charged with a extremely serious crime, they still think mischievous. They think that, well, there is some form of justice and that the justice will prevail. Yes, I did the little things that I felt would be helpful. One was to contact Operation Push, which my mom's played a role in, and to contact other sources and to explain to them. Matter of fact, I had an uncle who worked with the Chicago Police Department. He clearly knew what had occurred. But, you know, going to trial and now being charged as an adult, I did not understand that upon being found guilty, that I faced a natural life sentence. I don't even think the attorneys understood that because they told me that if you get found guilty, that they will probably try to sentence you to 30 years. That's what was told to me. Well, going through this trial, it was mind-blowing. It lasted for 3 days.
But during those 3 days, did you ever believe that you was going to get found guilty?
No. I thought that once the judge heard all of the evidence in the case, that the judge would release me, and at least that I would be found not guilty by the jury and that I would be released. I could never picture, not even in my worstest imagination of this, that I would have been found guilty.
Wow. So here you are, you're set down in the dock. The evidence has been laid out before you and the judge and the jury, and now the jury, they've made their closing statements. The jury's got to retire for their verdict. So now they come out, and the judge gives the famous statement, "Have you all reached a verdict?" a clear and unanimous one. Was your heart jumping through your chest by then?
Of course, there
was you still thinking that you're going to get found not guilty and the truth is going to come out?
I was ready to go home. That was my mindset. Was ready to go home. First of all, I was tired of being locked up like a dog, and I was ready to go home. And the jury came back with a unanimous verdict of guilty, and right there, I just knew that, well, okay, I'm going to be sentenced to 30 years. You know, I got to go to school. I'm going to have to learn this law to try to figure out how in the world am I going to get out of prison. So that was my thinking once being found guilty.
Wow, at 60, well, and now you're 17 and a half, right? So
yes, I was 17 and a half in September, well, over a half. I was almost 18 when sentenced in September of 1982. And because being a young kid and before sentencing, and as I've stated, I had a African-American judge, I had prepared this speech. I prepared it partially by writing it down, and I prepared it in my head as to what I would tell the judge if they asked me if I had anything to state before sentencing. Well, I didn't know that I would keep speaking for nearly 2 hours before the judge sentenced me. But nearly 2 long hours I spoke, and I can still remember as if it was yesterday me telling the judge that I watched the police steal my youth, and now the jury has stolen my life. I explained to the judge that I never even committed this crime. I asked the judge basically why in the world was people being allowed to come inside of these courtrooms looking like mummies and describing stories of being tortured inside of police stations, and nothing was being done. Of course, the judge did not answer me back. He listened and what would appear to be patiently to what I stated, but I accused the judge also of being a part of a systematic cover-up to draw convictions upon poor African Americans who were actually innocent, but due to the fact that they could not hire appropriate legal counsel, they were silenced, they were convicted, and sent to prison. Well, let me tell you, I had read this out of a newspaper article. I had no knowledge of the fact that this was so largely spread out throughout the city of Chicago, because as I've stated, I knew nothing about police officers torturing suspects inside of police station interrogation rooms. And little that I knew, everything that I told the judge was true, was 100% true. So what the prosecutors tried to do to discredit at least what I had told the judge, they stated that I was mentally retarded and that I had only stated these things to attempt to wiggle up out of the seriousness of these charges, and therefore that I was guilty, that I had only stated these things so that now I could get back out into society and do similar things that I was accused of and had been found guilty of before the court. So I was basically silenced by the criminal justice system as the attempt of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office to further conceal the fact that they had knowledge, first-class knowledge, that children and men were being taken down to police stations at Area 2 and 3 violent crime units, and that they were being tortured.
Wow. And so here you are now. You've been sentenced. You've made your speech to the judge, and now you're ready to hear what your actual sentence is. Yep. So up until that moment, you're thinking probable 30 years maximum, but I'll use that 30 years to fight my corner and get myself out of jail, right?
Yes.
But you didn't get 30 years.
No, but see, even as a kid that was naive, I knew something was going on, because when I walked inside of the courtroom and they announced the case, it was on a Monday when the judge had originally set to sentence me. And when they called it, I saw all of this media in the courtroom. And I couldn't understand why all of a sudden all of this media was now concerned with this case. Well, the judge continued sentencing until the next day. And he said that we would come back to court the next day and he would impose sentencing. Well, when I came back to court on that Tuesday, the same thing happened. It was media that filled up the entire courtroom. I had never even seen worldwide media personalities, but now here it is. I'm seeing them in this courtroom. And, they knew that I was facing a natural life sentence and that I would be the third juvenile in the state of Illinois that would be sentenced to a natural life term, but I had no knowledge of it. Apparently, the attorneys lacked the experience to have knowledge of it, and it was like a 3-ring circus in the courtroom. And looking at all of the media inside of the courtroom, I just felt obligated to get these facts out so at least this stuff could get printed, and I looked at it, perhaps it could help me on my appeal. Sad to say, entering the prison system in 1982, our prison systems offered some opportunity of learning. It provided you with an opportunity of a GED and college courses, which therefore I did go to school. I did obtain my GED. I did obtain, over the course of years, some college education, as well as I was constantly fighting day and night like a dog, trying to get out of prison. Each court I would go to, it was turned down. Each and every appeal was never given an opportunity. And I was starting to wonder why. Could people not see the fact that I had been wrongfully convicted? Well, I didn't understand then that if you don't have a constitutional violation, then therefore you don't have grounds for the court. And due to the fact that I had adjudicated the fact that I was beaten at the trial level, other than at the first stage of the appeal was I able to bring up the fact that I was mistreated by the police, and then everything else would follow and be considered as res judicata if I was denied. Res judicata means that here it is, a issue that you have raised before the court. It's been ruled against you, and now because it's ruled against you, you are now procedurally barred from ever raising that claim again unless you have what is considered as newly discovered evidence to provide you with that opportunity to raise that claim.
Wow, that must have taken every ounce of hope out of you.
It did, but it began to cause me to dig just a little deeper and a little deeper and a little deeper. I begin to now educate myself about racism and the effects of racism. And that played a major role with me, I would say, in the latter 1990s, one spending more years in prison than alive in the society. And I said, I have to regroup and figure out what's going on. Well, the Chicago Tribune in the city of Chicago, they ran several articles, and it was on false confessions. And they came down to the prison and they interviewed me. And once doing the interview, I felt obligated that something had to be filed in court. So I did file a petition in court. I will state honestly that petition it didn't have merit. It didn't have merit based off upon the fact of the American law system, due to the fact that these were all issues that I had raised at some previous time. The attorney, at least not attorney, because I filed this on my own, the judge denied the petition. So as a way to try to get around the judge's denial, I filed for a motion for DNA testing on the bottles, and the judge approved it, therefore restating the petition that he had denied. Well, I sat in prison from 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. This petition was still working its way through the court system, as slow as a turtle, but it was working its way through the court system.
And at that point, how many years had you spent in jail?
At that point, it would have been roughly, in 2002, it was roughly about like 20 years at that point.
Wow.
And so I filed this petition before the court, which the court originally denied, but now filing for DNA, they reinstated the petition. And now it's just dragging and dragging and dragging all the way up until 2007. I recall being notified by one of the prison guards that I had a visit and that I had to get ready to go on this visit. Well, I got ready and I went on the visit, and it was people from Northwestern School of Law, and they were doing a study on juveniles that had been sentenced to prison for the rest of their lives in an attempt to gain a parole system. Well, once they heard of my situation, and they were able to confirm that, you know, these things actually was raised in the courts and things of that nature, they went out and solicited a very large law firm. These were corporate lawyers, attorneys with very limited criminal experience. They agreed right off of the bat, yes, we're going to take this case. They came down to the prison. They interviewed me. They told me that their investigations normally take about 6 months. They told me to be patient, and once their investigation was complete, they would give me a call or come down to the prison and visit me. Well, they contacted me exactly 2 days later. It was several days before New Year's of 2007. And they told me that they had some good news and some bad news. And I was just prone always for bad news. So I told them to give me the bad news first. So they told me the bad news is that it's going to take them some time to get me free from prison, but they were through with their investigation, and that their investigation had confirmed 100% that I was innocent, that upon their arrival in that community and consulting with some of the long time residents of that community, they had gathered affidavits from them already stating who had actually committed this crime, that they had contacted the Chicago Police Department, and that they had told them that they had the wrong person and had provided this information to the police department, which the police department failed to even act upon. So really, an investigation that normally takes 6 months was completed in 2 days. Wow. So what the attorney's next step was to do was to DNA a knife that was found in my possession, whom the police had claimed that I had stabbed this guy, Robert T. Watson, during this altercation before he was shortly killed. Well, they claimed that this knife had blood on it. Well, once we did what was called a vacuum DNA on the knife, it determined that it was no blood, never, ever, on that knife. The bottles determined that, yes, there was fingerprints on those bottles. They were not my fingerprints. They were the police officer's fingerprints. So, therefore, we, from 2008, because 2008 had kicked in, it took about maybe 3 to 4 months to go through the process of all the DNA testing. So what the attorney stated was that they were convinced that now they had all of the evidence that they needed to now to work and to prepare a new petition before the court, which they did do. It took them several months to prepare the petition. They filed the petition in court. And once filing the petition in court, the Cook County Chief Judge, Paul Beeble, he therefore had stated that a conflict of legal interest existed with the Cook County, State's Attorney's Office, due to the fact that the prosecutors were found to have hidden evidence in these cases, and that some of these prosecutors had actually represented this crooked cop, John Burge, in civil proceedings. Wow. So therefore, it was ruled that his involvement in my case constituted that my case had to be removed from the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and assigned to the Special Prosecutor's Office. They assigned a prosecutor by the name of Stuart Noodleman to oversee approximately 21 different cases at that particular time. And my case being the first case, it drug on. my mom's got sick, Virginia Clements, and she developed cancer. I started hearing from people that were writing me all the time, and they told me, did you know that your mom's would be at the protest and she's spitting up blood? And did you know this? And I had never even known this. So I called her on the telephone and I asked her about this. And she was like, well, I'm okay. They found cancer in her lungs. She had been a smoker for about like 30 years, but she had stopped. And it had been approximately 20 years before the any type of symptoms of her smoking had ever affected her.
Right. Okay.
So the cancer was, man, it was growing in leaps and bounds. So she had to go in for a procedure, and she went in for the procedure, and the doctors gave her then 6 months to live is what they gave her. So the special prosecutor, along with the attorneys that was representing my case, and understanding that this was a process that would take years and years to figure out in the criminal court system, they had reached a agreement. The agreement is that, well, we would let him go and we will dismiss these charges. Well, unfortunately, the prosecutors had never did what was considered as a preliminary investigation. The judge finds out, well, that there was no 651C signed in the case. As a result of that, it put the entire case at jeopardy all over again. So that meant that in May of 2009, we had to go back to the drawing board. And we had to go back to the drawing board quick, because all of these issues that I had presented before the court were raised in this petition. And now the judge was speaking as, okay, well, these are like res judicata issues. Well, the court had ruled maybe a year or two before my case was brought forward that they would lax the res judicata bar in these cases. Well, we still couldn't get around the 651C violation. So prosecutors, they drafted up a new petition with a dying mother that now at this particular time, I could barely even talk to because she was going through chemo and she was too weak to even talk, too weak to even communicate. So what they stated was this, and this is how this operated. They picked one of these people and stated, well, guess what? You kill this person. That's what ended up happening to me. I pled guilty to the murder of Robert T. Watson, despite the fact that the medical examiner in the case, which was Dr. Lee Beamer, had been ruled incompetent, not only in the state of Illinois, but in the state of Oklahoma. In 1976, he had been ruled incompetent to provide proper medical examinations to the causes of death. Well, come to find out, this affected this doctor throughout his entire career, because he had actually buried people who had actually been gunshot victims. And he had listed that those people died of heart attacks. And all of this evidence coming out against the medical examiner, they still picked this one individual. I pled. I was released after 28 years in 2009 of August out of the Illinois Department of Corrections. And basically, the rest of it is history. I have been basically compensated by the city of Chicago, who has admitted, by the way, that I was taken to a police station while at the age of 16 years old, and that I was tortured psychologically as well as physically to confess to a crime that I did not commit. So if this makes common sense to you, which it makes totally no common sense to me, that's what happened to me.
Wow. Wow. You know, that's one amazing story. And here's the thing, Mark. You are an amazing man, because throughout that entire battle, all I can hear is a man who never gave up.
Well, you cannot give up in these particular situations. And that is one of the reasons in which I was hired as administrator over the campaign to end the death penalty, because of my persistence and because I understand. Let me tell you, when you are giving a death sentence, man, and I'm talking about that judge set that date within 90 days. That means within each and every one of those 90 days, you got to make those days mean something towards bringing out the fact that this person should not be on death row, or else how to stop this death execution from occurring. And I think once being released after the 28 years and having so much energy, and that's the way it was, because now it's like being hemmed up and now they let you out. And I was all over the place, all over the U.S., speaking out about children being sentenced to natural life as well as the death penalty. One of my first cases that dealt with the death penalty, at least one that was assigned to me, was stopping the execution of Troy Davis. And I'm pretty sure that many people over in the UK know clearly what happened to Troy Davis. Troy Davis was a African-American, approximately 29 years of age. He was accused of killing a Savannah, Georgia police officer, and it looked and it appeared as if it was a slam dunk case until attorneys were able to reinvestigate this case, and it determined that 7 out of the 9 witnesses had been coerced by the police to finger Troy Davis as the shooter in this particular case. One of the other 2 being Red Coles, he was a suspect all along in this case, and it was actually his gun that killed this police officer. The second young man that could not be considered as reliable in coming forth, he suffered from massive mental disabilities, in which the attorneys felt that his affidavit would therefore be scrutinized by the court system, so they did not even pursue an affidavit from him. But just to get 7 witnesses out of the 9 that testified that you committed this crime, it was good enough to use these witnesses to draw the conviction, but it was not good enough to use these witnesses to overturn the conviction. In Troy Davis' case, I went down to Atlanta, Georgia, approximately 2.5 months before Troy Davis intended execution in 2011 of September. And I basically, all of the people kept saying, well, you know, the people are not going to get up just for this case here. They're not going to do this. Well, coming out of a prison setting, I always looked at the impossible as possible. And I looked at it that if I could get up and be in Georgia and have enough time to greet, meet, and to organize in the state of Georgia, therefore I could build a larger coalition than even anyone even felt. And believe it or not, I had my doubts because I didn't know really where to start from. But I started from the University of Georgia, in which I had a speaking engagement, and I spoke at that university. And that university linked on to over 6,000 to 7,000 people getting involved. And Amnesty International had called a rally. I was highly upset once sitting in a meeting with Amnesty International, and you know, I didn't make it any secret that I was upset because I'm not getting up and traveling all of this distance to come for a silence protest. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to burn candles through this silence protest. And I was like, no, 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 we got to make noise. And due to the fact that I was able to run into many young kids, and many of these young kids were in criminal justice classes, and they were able to convince their friends, if you do nothing, just bring your child, bring somebody. And believe it or not, I thought maybe we would generate maybe about 1,000 to 1,500 people. I had no insight that we would draw the masses and masses of people that we drew. And I still can recall leading from the University of Georgia. It was about 1,000 of us, and we passed by Dr. King's church. That's Martin Luther King's original church, which his father was the pastor. And I could see Dr. King's son. I want to say his name was Dexter is his name. And I seen his son. And when I saw Dexter, all of these people just came from nowhere, like around the side of his church. And we stopped, and people informed us that Amnesty was in the park, and that Amnesty also had a very large gathering there, and that all of them was in the park, and that they were quiet. So we reached the determination that we were not going to follow Amnesty, that we were going to be as noisy as possible, and that we were going to leave from that point, and that we were going to take the streets over, and we was going to make the Atlanta Police Department shut down all of these streets. We were so successful where that immediately there was the national news, and we had all of this national news, and the people started to blend in and blend in. They could hear us for much as a mile as we were approaching this location, and we was in the street.
Here's the thing, Mark. I warned you that 2 hours would fly past, and we would probably still have so much more to talk about. We're probably about 5 minutes away before the show finishes. And sadly, Troy Davis was executed on the 21st of September, 2011, in the state of Georgia. And it's sad. But here it is, right? You get your freedom, and for all intents and purposes, you can just walk away and go and start living your life again. But you've chosen not to. So we've only got a few minutes left before we're going to have to end the show. It's 5:02 and we finish in 5 minutes.
Okay.
But if you can quickly round up and tell us, what do you do now, and what is your end game now? What can people do to help support, and how can they reach out and support what you're doing?
Well, what I primarily do in the city of Chicago is I fight around Chicago police torture cases as well as death penalty cases out of the state of Texas and the state of California. How people can get involved is easily. I have a Facebook page, and one of them is called the Campaign Against the Death Penalty. You can link on to that page, or you can link on to the official page of the official Chicago Police torture page, and you can begin to get involved. What we're faced with here in America is people getting involved so that we can have revenue. People think, I guess, that the government is funding us to fight them, and that's just not possible. The government will never fund you to fight them. But my name is Mark Clements, and they can find Mark Clements at MARK Clements, CLEMENTS. You can link up with me on Facebook, on Twitter under Prisoner Speak, or you can just simply email me at clemensm82@yahoo.com.
Mark, all I can say again is thank you for sharing your remarkable story with us here on Issues Today on World Jam Global Radio. And I think I'm going to look forward to having another meeting with you in the very near future where we can just follow on with some of the great work that you're doing around the country, trying to get the abolition of the death penalty, which is such a powerful movement and most definitely a worthy cause to fight for. Mark, thank you very much for sharing that story with us.
Thank you, Brother Kervin. Thank you.
The pleasure has been all ours. I'll send you a link for the YouTube clip when it's downloaded. But again, all I can do is thank you for being on the show. It's been a great show. It's finished too quickly. I just wish we had more time.
I understand. And thank you, Brother Kervin.
Thank you very much, Mark. We're out of here.
Okay. Bye-bye.
I don't know about you, but I just cannot believe what I just heard.
I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for my crime. I already did my time. I paid for.
Don't forget, you can join us again live next Saturday, same time, same place on Issues Today World Jam Global Radio.
Back in the day, I didn't really care about the system.
Where we've got a special show for you next week.
Do or die. I had too many rivals. I was too.
A young man was found standing on a street corner for over 3 years. When a woman who was on her way to work and passed him every day for those 3 years decided to stop and have a conversation. This guy was standing on a street corner. He was homeless. He was constantly begging.
I'm a changed man.
He appeared to have mental health related issues. But upon engaging with him and having a conversation, she realized that this young man was waiting for the return of his mother, who died on that very corner 3 years prior.
My time. I paid for my crime.
The story of This Is Victor, live next week on World Jam Global Radio's Issues Today. As for me, Kervin, Julien, I'm out of here. I want to say a big thank you going out to Mark Clements for joining us on the Forced to Confess, an absolutely powerful story, which we'll obviously repeat over and over again right here on World Jam Global. Once again, a big thank you going out to Teresa, my producer, who does such tremendous work in the background.
Proud of what I had to do. That's why I'm telling my story.
And we look forward to seeing you again, same time, same place, next Saturday on World Jam Global Radio. We're out of here.